Hi, and welcome to Mrs. Pam Reads. Today we are continuing in our story, Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella. In the last video, let me tell you, this is part 4, section 6. In the last video, we found out that Eddie Skizzens had sold his rights to the mortgage, or however that works, to Mark, Ray's brother-in-law. Sorry, I'm trying to get closer to you. And that Mark's company is trying to buy up all of the farmland in the area and run a computerized farming industry and raise the last holdout. So that's where we're at. All right. I have Annie phone her mother. Violetine, as she was named by her Alabama-born mother, is a great source of information. She sits in her parlor among her religious pictures and African violets, rocks, reads her Bible, and absorbs whatever is said around her, like a velvet dress collecting lint. She often does not understand what she hears, unless it is gossip of the most malicious kind, or a story of terminal illness. Catheter is one of her favorite words, but she can recall whole conversations from years in the past, particularly if she was in some way slighted. She has always insisted that I call her Violetine, I suppose out of fear that I might call her mother. Annie asks about Mark's plans for our farm. Mother, he spent all day Sunday with you. Surely he must have talked about it. Of course, Ray is here, and of course, I'll tell him whatever you tell me. She has to remind her mother several times that she will go to hell if she lies before she reluctantly lets go of what she knows. It turns out that Mark himself is having some serious financial problems. He and Bluestein have overextended themselves. Possession of our farm is holding up an agreement to lease all their Iowa land holdings to a Texas conglomerate. My charges are restless when we return. My charges are restless. I don't I believe you really have games out here, says Moonlight. Salinger eyes me skeptically, but remains silent. Eddie still carps about the $4,000 I spent on the tractor. Then, in the next breath, he apologizes for selling the mortgage. Give me some time, I say to Moonlight. Just pretend you're on holiday for a few days. Give it 10 days. If you don't at least get to see a game in 10 days' time, I'll personally drive you anywhere in Iowa so you can try out for I stop with the word real hanging like a corn kernel on the tip of my tongue. When I look at Salinger, he has a half smile on his face. Another team. I finish the sentence. But look, I've bought pork chops for supper. I thump down a brown parcel on the tabletop. As usual, it is Karen who alerts us. 2 days have passed. We are sitting at the oilcloth covered table in the kitchen, playing hearts. Eddie suggested it, and the rest of us complied. Richard and Moonlight are competitive, wailing loudly when fate is unkind to them. For hearts is a game relying heavily on luck. Eddie, too, is competitive, hating to lose, but he hides his feelings, only the occasional cross glance betraying him. I let luck take its course. I follow suit, Never count cards or try to surmise who holds which cards. Salinger doesn't care whether he wins or loses, but I have the feeling that he is memorizing gestures, such as Richard's furious expression of indignation when the Queen of Spades is dropped on his doorstep. Karen comes pounding down the stairs. "Daddy, the lights are on," she says. I go to the back door, from which I can see the sky awash with yellow. From above, the stadium must look like a volcanic crater boiling lazily, waiting for something to happen. We march single file toward the stadium. Karen leads the way, high-stepping like a majorette, followed by Moonlight, Eddie, Richard, tapping along with his serpentine cane, no Eddie's tapping, Salinger, and then me, with Annie holding tightly to my hand and looking breathless. As strange a parade as anyone would care to see assembled, my child shining like a jewel, Moonlight Graham adrift on the sea of time, my brother, who might be me or I him, Eddie limping along, his hair frosty beneath the floodlight sun, Jerry, a world-famous author, walking among us without pretension. I wonder what each will experience. Who will see the wonders of the night, and who will see only an empty field, eerily illuminated by a single battery of floodlights, where moths crash into the bright bulbs like determined kamikaze pilots. The stars seem to float like flowers in a bowl only yards above our head as this motley procession winds along behind the third base stands. As we climb the bleacher in left field, I can see that Jerry is smiling, and I wonder how much of it's his own joy and how much is for me. He must be incredibly happy to know that I am not a fraud. Moonlight holds a long hand out in front of him, palm up like a baby reaching to explore a bug. "It wasn't like this today," he says, his eyes feasting on all he sees. The White Sox taking batting practice, players throwing along the first and third base lines. Eddie Siccotti is warming up in the corner just below us, his fastball whapping into the catcher's mitt, sending up a small explosion of dust each time it hits. Then it is my turn to be brushed with wonder. Annie catches my arm as I gasp involuntarily. "The catcher," I croak. We all look at the white uniformed young man crouching crab-like in a White Sox bullpen, but only Annie and I, and perhaps Salinger, if he remembers any of my stories, realize the significance of his being a solid, tangible person and not a shade that might have been outlined and cut from the fog, using a baseball bat as a knife. "Is it him?" whispers Annie. "I'm not sure," I reply, my voice constricted. I never knew him when he was a young man. I've seen the sepia portrait of him in his World War I uniform. He is handsome and square-jawed, and the photo is touched up so much as to make him seem unreal. The tiny photo in its ivory frame still lumbers on my mother's dresser in her high-rise in Montana. As Joe moves into left field, Karen and I lean down to talk to him. "Is it him?" I say, and I can tell by the look in Joe's eyes that it is. "Wait until the lineup is announced," he says, almost keeping a straight face. My chest feels as if it is full of buzzing bees. Then Joe looks at Moonlight, who is sitting neck bent forward, craning as if he's looking down a well. "Graham?" says Joe, and looks at the young man up and down thoroughly. "What the heck are you doing up here in the stand? Your contract arrived today." And we have all been wondering when you were going to report. You're supposed to be warming up. He nods towards the players along the baselines. Moonlight looks down at his glove, which is buckled to a belt loop. Me? He says. You came here to play ball, didn't you? Says Joe. Manager's waiting to see you. Come on down and start warming up. Yes, sir, says Moonlight and starts climbing quickly down the bleachers. He walks around the end of the fence where Joe shakes his hand and puts him to throwing a ball with a ghostly substitute outfielder. What's going on here? Says Richard in a somewhat desperate voice. What are you looking at? Who are you talking to? He pulls at the sleeve of my shirt. Richard can't see the players on the field as we see them. As I realize this, I become aware that instead of feeling sorry for him, I am highly elated. I know without asking that all he is aware of is the deadly silent park sitting in the cornfield, illuminated by one stark bloom of lights on a single standard. Richard's eyes are blind to the magic. There is finally a difference between us. Playing right field and batting seventh for the White Sox is Moonlight Graham, the announcer intones, and looking down, we can see Moonlight standing in the dugout, smiling like a Halloween pumpkin. He has been clothed in a new uniform, and his chest now bears the White Sox brand, an O in the top crook of the giant S and an X in the bottom. Catching and batting eighth is Johnny Kinsella, says the announcer. My breath escapes like air hissing from a tire. I stare down to where he crouches, warming up the pitcher. My Class B catcher who played in the minors in Florida and California. My father. My dream has been fulfilled. My request granted. I have earned this favor by the sweat of my brow and the pain of my back. I should be ecstatic. Then why do I feel weak as a kitten? I feel as if I'm about to commit a crime. Annie hugs my arm. That man has said the same name as us, shouts Karen, running up the steps towards us. That he does, I say, and try to sound calm, for I have no idea how I will explain the situation to her if she persists. Instead, she says, "Oh, can I have a hot dog, Daddy?" And it is with relief that I cheerfully count change into her blunt little hand. Is this some kind of a religion? Richard asks. He has risen and stands a few feet away from me, his expression one of absolute bewilderment. It may be, I reply, trying to picture the world through his eyes. You're all crazy, he says with my voice, but we don't pay much attention to him. Annie is talking to Shoeless Joe. Karen has returned with a hot dog and a Coke. After the national anthem, I watch as Moonlight Graham trots out to right field. If he is nervous, he does not show it, for his stride is solid and his shoulders confident. He turns to face the infield and pounds his fists into his glove. Crazy, says Richard. Salinger leans towards me. And I thought I had a good imagination, he says. I could never dream up a plot as bizarre as this. I'm going back into town, says Richard. I was going to take the night off, but I'm darned if I'm going to sit around here with you people and watch the grass grow. Take the car, I say, tossing him the keys to the Datsun. I suddenly feel very benevolent toward Richard. It will save you the taxi fare. Ray's always been weird, Richard says in Annie's general direction. He used to have imaginary friends when he was a kid. I don't know if they were people or animals, but he called them Rags and Sigs. And he used to have conversations with them and play games with them. I thought he'd outgrown it, Annie looks his way and smiles disarmingly. I thought you were all right, he says to Annie. I am, says Annie. Her conversation with Shoeless Joe over, she steps back and sits down beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. And I thought the kid was okay, Richard persists. I thought when she talked about games and baseballs and things, she just had an imagination like her dad when he was a kid. Kid, says Eddie Skizzens, suddenly attentive. Not you, kid, says Richard in exasperation. Then to Karen, he asks, what do you see down there? I see the baseball game, says Karen, taking a bite of her hot dog. Rags and cigs, Annie whispers into my ear. Rags and cigs? She giggles. Richard glowers at Karen. I guess he thought he had an ally. When he is around, Karen follows him as if she were a puppy, and he had a pork chop tied to his ankle. He has taught her his carnival spiel, and she has learned it well. I thought I'd meet some freaks with the carnival, says Richard, but words desert him momentarily. A guy who's going to be buried in a Chicago Cub uniform, somebody else who wears a baseball uniform day and night. Where did he go anyway? Somebody who claims he's J.D. Salinger, and my brother, who's too busy building a baseball field in the middle of nowhere and driving around the country collecting weirdos to notice that his farm is being sold out from underneath him. He stops for a breath. Go to town, Richard, I say. I'll wait up for you and we'll have a talk. Sell lots of whatever it is you sell. The world's strangest babies are here. See the famous Siamese twins, the gorilla baby, the baby born to a 12-year-old mother. Karen sings songs as Richard stomps down the green painted bleacher, muttering. And I swear I saw Archie, Moonlight, whatever, walk down these steps and disappear. Quick as if somebody switched off a light, he says. Stay as long as you like. Come out when you're ready. This is a family show. Mothers, bring your daughters. Fathers, bring your sons. Shh, honey, says Annie, and Karen goes back to watching the game. Oh, Lord, says Salinger from behind me. I was still in my crib when all this happened. These are the White Sox after the scandal. When I turn to look at him, he is staring at me, his face rapturous. There are racing cars spinning gravel all around my ribs, he says, and rubs his chest. It's like the day I held my newborn son for the first time. I only smile. This is too wonderful to keep to ourselves. You have to share. This is too, oh, I already said that, sorry. With whom? I say. How many? How do we select? And first, how do we make people believe? I'll vouch for you. With the rumors there are about you, I think not. You're difficult to convince. Pot calling the kettle names, but don't you see, we have little to do with this. We aren't the ones who decide who can see it and who can't. I wouldn't let my own twin brother see my miracle if I could. But more important than that, the way you feel now is the way people feel who react to your work. If I share, then so must you. Salinger flops back on his seat. The Sox go down in order in the first two innings. Moonlight Graham leads off the third. He has been swinging two bats in the on-deck circle. As the loudspeaker booms out his name, he drops the weighted black bat and advances on the plate, slashing the air with a brand new white ash bat, the color of vanilla ice cream. He jigs a little in the batter's box, then cocks the bat, the top end of it trembling as if he were stirring something, and waits, tense. The pitcher fires, and Moonlight Graham takes a curveball for a strike. As he throws again, Moonlight snaps the bat forward and the ball sails in a high arc to right center. The center fielder backs up a couple of steps, lopes a few strides to his left, and makes the catch. Moonlight runs it out, and as he curls across the diamond from second base toward the dugout, I'm certain he gives us a high sign. I think of my visit with Doc Graham and our conversation about a baseball wish, and I feel as if there is a hot water bottle pushed against my heart as I watch Moonlight Graham take his seat in the dugout. I phoned my mother to tell her of Richard's return. I've made sure to do it while he is away in town, in case he might bolt at the thought of any more lead being inserted in his boot soles. She is very happy to hear the news. We talk for a long time, begin reminiscing about my childhood. I feel closer to her than I have in years. Remember the sparrow? I say to her, and I don't give her a chance to reply, but rush on. I retell the story. Mom, you've got to come and see what I have here, what I've brought to life. And I charge on, telling her the story of the baseball park, everything except about my father. But I hint, oh, how I hint. I can only imagine her excitement. When I stop for a breath, though, she says, I'm almost sure it was Richard with the gun that day. In fact, I'm certain of it. You must be mistaken, dear. I turn away and hand the phone to Annie. She's very good at talking with my mother. I prance out into the yard and bay at the moon as if I am possessed until Jerry appears at the back door, and eventually Eddie Schisms hobbles around the corner of the house to see what is going on. Moonlight is no longer with us. The moment he walked around the corner of the outfield fence and shook hands with Shoeless Joe, he ceased to be one of us, as if he ever had been, and became one of them. When the game was over, he laughed and joked with us and accepted our congratulations on making the lineup, on making his first hit. But then he drifted to the gate in center field with the other players, his duffel bag miraculously transported from the house to his hands. Late that night, as I sit at the table looking at my bank books and bills, Jerry comes padding downstairs. His hair is disheveled and he is wearing a white shirt with a tail hanging out over his jeans. He is barefooted. I don't want to offend you, Ray, he begins, but as you may know, I'm not exactly poor. Okay, you can put in $20 towards the groceries, I say. That's not exactly what I had in mind. I know, and thank you, but I've got to wait this out. If I let you help, I'll feel like the rich kid who owns the ball and bat and makes people pay to be on the team. Anyway, I like to think I'm being put to a test of some kind. Maybe the reason you came and got me was so I could help you out of your financial jam. Maybe. But to use one of my mother-in-law's favorite terms, this seems like such a worldly problem. Surely there was a more important reason. What if you're wrong? Your brother-in-law and his friends will have the ballpark plowed under in a matter of minutes after they get control of the farm. They'll bulldoze the house, sell off the equipment. Don't remind me. Just let me bring the mortgage up to date. That will hold them at bay for a while. No. Why be so damn stubborn? Everybody needs assistance once in a while. I'd consider it a privilege to help. Promise to publish, and I'll let you. Salinger's friendly but persuasive expression suddenly turns to one of indignation. One has nothing to do with the other, he shouts. I know, and for some reason I cannot fathom, I am smiling. You're not only ungrateful, you're stupid too, says Jerry. I know. What do you think you are? Some kind of mystic? He digs in his jeans and flings a quarter down on the table. In God we trust, and all others pay cash. Hang in with me for a few weeks. Stick with you and I'll end up in irons, says Jerry, the anger gone from his voice. He even half smiles as he adds, I'll help you and Annie look for an apartment after you get evicted. Then he rises wearily and makes his way towards the stairs. And we're going to stop there. That was a sweet offer, though, don't you think? All right, you guys. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.